Bom dia, prazer estar aqui. Good morning, it's a pleasure to be here. That was Portuguese, sending our Brazilian love from the south to my dear North American friends. My new home, the United States, got the pleasure to recently receive my American citizenship. Joining this complex, paradoxical land full of hopes and contradictions, and feeling all these emotions. Been, as Kevin said, been a long time supporter of Horizons. I did my first appearance in 2010, so over a decade ago, and have been developing my own leadership and hopefully continued wisdom, and growing together with this movement, seeing where it's going and following in the developments. And being here today, I think we are in a real crossroads for the psychedelic movement. We're seeing legal access, medical access advance, and it's coming to be more and more concrete and real on the one side, and on the other side, decriminalization initiatives popping all over the country, spreading like some kind of contagious positive fever that is just taking over so many cities across the nation. And all these new players coming in, as my friend Eric Daves wrote on a paper of Chacruna, some sharks, circling the waters, the pristine waters of the psychedelic movement, and all these new players and venture capital and all this money and all this interest, and a lot of people that never had any first-hand experience with psychedelics coming to be investors on psychedelics and seeing psychedelics as this new kind of gold rush, and seeing business opportunities. An array of different possibilities and intentions and expectations. And I think this conference itself is a huge pillar of the psychedelic movement. It has been a central place where conversations around this, our future and our shared interests and common dreams and hopes have been exchanged, and over tears and glasses of beer and nightly conversations. Horizons has been a spot where so many of us have united, have come in our annual pilgrimage to meet our peers and our friends and check in with each other. And I think the way that this conference is happening this year already expresses and shows a little bit how this movement grew and how it exploded. Because back in the day, not to be like those kind of people, but I did turn out 50 recently, which impacted me, and I'm feeling kind of all right. I'm not a child anymore. So in my times, it was different, and it feels very different right now. I think all these parties that happening, like 5 parties per night, 5 nights, it's just exploding. It's really becoming huge, and there's a lot of this energy of finances, and people are coming here not just to meet their peers and wear their, funky psychedelic dresses, but also close business deals. And so we're here, and it's up to us to gear this movement in ways that we feel identified with, and that are good, that are healthy, that are positive. And so I think it's time for us to really create this mainstreaming of psychedelics in a way that is inclusive, that is equitable, that is diverse, that offers access to everybody. Because if not all of us are free, none of us are free. And so it's really it's up to us to dream of models of business that mirror the psychedelic experience, that are creative, that are mind-blowing, that change paradigms, that make us rethink reality and translate this into concrete actions. So everybody that is involved in this movement, everybody that wants to invest, everybody that wants to have a part in it, everybody that wants to be together in this has to be creative and has the obligation to think of all of these aspects, and more importantly, to honor the roots of the psychedelic movement. Psychedelics is not just another good, it's not just another commodity, it's not just another celebrity trend, it's not just another cool, hipster, fancy thing. It is deeply serious, and it involves us recognizing first and foremost that the origins of these movements lie in indigenous people across the Americas and other continents. So we must all honor and respect and celebrate and recognize the indigenous roots of the psychedelic movements. So we're talking about the importance of indigenous reciprocity, and we're talking about recognizing, even if you just like synthetics or MDMA or synthetic mescaline, synthetic psilocybin or LSD, we are all here because of indigenous people, because it was by observing the behavior of indigenous people who mastered the knowledge over these plants that our scientists imitated, created, and made variations out of these molecules. And also just, there is this huge continuity between shamanism and between traditional use of sacred plants. I'm wearing, you know, my thematic t-shirt, honor and protect sacred plants, that we learned and we got our inspiration. Some of the classic scientists sat in teepees with the Native Americans and observed how Native Americans used psychedelics to heal, and decided to create research studying the potentials, the healing potentials of psychedelics for different ailments, for different kinds of afflictions and diseases. So there's this big continuity between shamanism, the underground of psychedelic therapies, and the above ground FDA clinical trials. There is a big shared knowledge, and a lot of our protocols and a lot of our ethos and our whole understanding around these molecules ultimately are heirs of this traditional knowledge. And this traditional knowledge make us remember that we can't really dissociate psychedelics from the people that traditionally use psychedelics. And we cannot dissociate psychedelics or sacred plants from the lands and territory of those people. We must engage and stand in solidarity with indigenous people in the world now. Stop romanticizing the mythical figure of a generic Indian, a romantic, wise, ecological master, and get engaged and get in relationship and stand in allyship with the real indigenous people that still exist and that continue to suffer massive genocide across all the Americas and are still highly marginalized, and whose territories we're still stealing and we're still disrespecting and we're still promoting acts of cultural aggression. So I want to remind all of us that today we're having these conversations and invite the business people that are investing in psychedelics to think critically. How do I give back? And how can I reciprocate? So from the ayahuasca enthusiast to the modest holder of a clinic to the middle retreat center to the big psychedelic businesses, all of us, we all have to think on how to include people of color, how to include indigenous people, how to honor, and how to create access in this movement as a whole. So, I want to move towards concluding and just invite us to also remember notions of healing from a traditional perspective that often involves the idea. So we have this model to say, okay, I synthesized one molecule and I'm going to cure one disease with this, and I'm going to patent it and I'm going to make money out of it. I want to make us remember that, to look to traditional people and also understand that healing is a much more global affair, and healing has a holistic dimension. So traditionally, if you consider a lot of the literature. I am an anthropologist, and that's the kind of thing we read and we like, to talk about healing from a more traditional perspective. It is not just about physical illness, although everybody recognizes that dimension. Healing has to do with dealing with your relationship to your body, but also with your fellow other humans, with your kin, with your family, with the community, and also with the world of the non-humans, or the invisible world, or the world of the dead, the world of the ancestors, the spiritual world, the world of other beings. And healing is often understood as a disharmony on all of these levels. So a lot of what we manifest in our physical bodies have to do with all this set of relationships, because we are not alone. We are inserted in a chain of relationship, in a chain of exchanges, in a chain of being dialoguing with other beings, either visible or invisible. And restoring healing is talking to all of those dimensions. So we have to work on all of them. And again, for the psychedelic movement, it's not just about creating this mechanical, reductionistic, biochemical approach. Although it's important to advance the science, we also have to think about these relations and the community and our relationship to other people and to that beyond us. And so I wanted to bring this idea of healing, and I want to conclude with one word about integration. Integration has become a buzzword, one of those things that everybody repeats a bit all over and over again. I want us to invite everybody to think about the concept of integration. And this, again, it's not just about the individual with his own history, although it's important, but we talk a lot about personal trauma and my this and my that and my history and my childhood and it's not just about the individual. Again, we have to think about ways to integrate the substances, the psychedelics, into our society. So as an anthropologist, I invite all of us to talk about the cultural integration of psychedelics into our societies, because without these substances being considered legitimate, valued, and respected as part of our cultural identity, and normalized in that sense, that taking out the taboo and the stigma, and people being able to talk about this with their families, in their Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, we're still going to be running behind. And also, to conclude, integration. When you go and you take psychedelics, and I have been an ayahuasca researcher, that's kind of my main identity. I was quite obsessed for 20 years with this topic, still a little obsessed, about drinking ayahuasca. And you go to that place and you feel all those feelings, and you are in awe, and you're in this, you want to call it unconscious or spiritual or magical or whatever you call it. You are in this universe of powerful, incredible, mind-blowing reality. And that's so incredible, and you're so grateful. And then when you come back to reality, what do you do with this? And people call it integration. I want to call this, you're having a call for action in reality. And again, it's not just about you becoming a better person, but how are you, as a member of society, of our communities, creating action in the world, and creating a revolution, and creating a better world? And what are you doing for this movement? How are you giving back from your psychedelic experience to the world? So I invite all of you to serve and to give back and to create action. That's why we just launched a book called Psychedelic Justice, which is about a way to bring this back to the world into action, into concrete steps. Thank you.